Hello, and welcome to this week's exciting edition of Victory Never Sleeps. Got a very special episode for you this evening. We're trying a new feature on the program, and I'm eager to see how this goes and excited about our guest today. We have my good friend and the AFA's law speaker, Allen Turnage, here to talk to you about succeeding financially. And I'm going to have Alan give you his spiel here about kind of his idea for this in general. But one thing that is a recurring truth for a great many of us, so the idea of this show, Victory Never Sleeps, is about winning. And it's about winning in a lot of different ways. It's a whole lot of different areas in your life that you have an opportunity to overcome, to succeed, and to be more than you are, and to maximize your capabilities. And doing that allows you to be a better, literally everything. The more successful and victorious you are in your life, you're a better son, better father, better husband, better coworker, better friend, better leader, better follower, better any of those things. And a lot of those things to too many of our folk, as I've mentioned before, our people battle with soul sickness maybe in a unique way, or certainly in a profound way that has affected generations of our folk. And all of us are affected to one degree or another, but so many of our people have lost sight of trying to win things. There's a generation previous to myself and all of the generations I can think of before that, that was the idea. That was the expectation. You tell your children, you can be anything you want when you grow up. And our people had dreams and they reached for the stars, and some of them even grabbed them. And there was so much that we could do, but we have, we're a couple generations in now to a lot of our people not realizing there's a whole lot they can do in their life to be successful. And one of those things I see a lot of our people really struggle with is what we call adulting. And when I say that, I don't say that as a laugh at, but I say it as a laugh with, because it's something that, in many different ways in my life, I've found myself, man, I need to figure this out. When did I get old? All of a sudden I'm 43. When did that happen? And I think a lot of us are that way. And when I find myself at those moments in a lot of different areas of my life, this man is a guy I go to talk to about just those things, because he's figured out how to win in a lot of different ways. And so it is my pleasure to welcome him on the program today to talk to us about adulting and succeeding financially. Alan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. It is a pleasure to see you again, even if it's only on the internet.
Can you tell, before we really get into the swing of it, can you tell folks a little bit about the concept and what we're trying to achieve with it?
Well, a couple of things. I think overall, we in discussion conceived of this series with me approaching some of these topics that are uncomfortable for a lot of people to talk about. People don't like to talk about money. They don't like to talk about a lot of the things that come around as being 43, or in my case, 44, to be an adult, and to struggle with a lot of these ideas. And it certainly touches on, it comes as a part of the soul sickness that you mentioned. Our civilization, our society, our communities have been fractured in many ways, and we don't have the integrated top to bottom community to from where we used to be able to go to the guy in the neighborhood, or the guy above us in the church, or our mom's friend who knew stuff. And so I really think that it is a proper function of the church our church to help people with these issues. It's certainly important to all the topics that we're going to touch on, assuming that that this series continues, like I hope it does. It's important that we have discussions about the things that people need to know about. The religious part is absolutely important, but the community part is also important. That's one of the things that keeps me excited about being a member of the Asatru Folk Assembly. The fact that we can be that we can go to a Hoff, or we can go to an online meeting and meet people and talk about things that we don't get to talk about in the way that we, as a member of this community with this mindset and this worldview, can talk about with a whole lot of people. So I hope to be able to bring some of these topics to the fore. Certainly, I have a long background. My practice, for anybody who doesn't know, has centered on bankruptcy exclusively since 1998. So I've worked with thousands and thousands of budgets. I know I have a general idea what works. I have a general idea that some things that don't work. And I hope to be able to share some of that expertise tonight and help our people elevate the way that they approach their finances.
So your practice, you say, does that mean that you are a legitimate attorney?
That's what my bar license says.
There you go. According to the state of Florida, that
and
is
Georgia.
so. And Georgia. No, I just wanted to, in case anybody out there doesn't know, you speak from a place of not just life experience credibility, but professional credibility in this arena. And it's really a valuable tool to have you here, not only to present your material, but also to answer any questions folks might have. So please keep in mind, as always, this show is either question centric or, on some of these episodes, certainly question friendly. Any question you ask, I do not know how long the law speaker has with us tonight, but I will stay on the show till I get done answering all the questions. But yeah, please ask anything you like. If it comes up and is relevant to how we're going, depending on how Alan wants to present, we may get to them in context. And if they don't relate, please ask them anyway, and we will, approach them at the end of the program when we have time left over. I'd also like to throw out a quick thing. It's kind of a top of the show thing before we get in the meat and taters here. Help us out. Word of mouth is our best friend when it comes to getting the message out there. I talk to the folk builders a lot. One of the things that prevents us from, prevents not the right word, I guess. One of the avenues that is available to us, we have so many people that should be coming home to our faith and to Asatru. The reason that they're not, in large part, at least vast numbers of them, is they simply don't know we're here. So if this is something you like, if it's something that you find entertaining, educational, or spiritually beneficial to you, please share, like, subscribe, tell people about it. Invite your friends, invite your family. So those of you that don't know, we come out live and are willing to take your questions at any point in time on YouTube, Odyssey, Twitch, X, better known as Twitter, Rumble, and VK. So we're live at you on all those platforms right now, and we'll come out likely tomorrow as a podcast, if that's how you want to consume it, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and on Amazon. So there's a lot of places to get this. If you're hearing it and you are a heterosexual white person that wants to return to the gods of your ancestors, you should join the Asatru Folk Assembly. www.runestone.org. Read about things. If you have questions, you can ask them here. You can send them to any of our contacts. You can send them to me, and we'd love to talk to you about it. And if you should be here, then we'd love to have you here with us. We're doing really, really special things together, and we'd love for you to be part of it. That's really all I've got for the top of the show. Alan, please take it away.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And I appreciate that. As we used to say in a different fundraising context, the usual disgusting plea for money. One of the things down toward the tail end of my notes is, one of the reasons you want to be able to budget a little tighter is so that you can give the AFA a little more generously. We are doing great things. We are doing good things. We are certainly sound stewards of your money. So whatever you give us, we're going to wring 11 cents out of every dime. So I have a short presentation prepared. I assume that our technical advisor will enter in with a couple of forms that I sent him earlier this week. I prepared ahead of time this time for a change. So the first thing I want to talk about is why we want to talk about budgeting. I think when we talk about money, it's one of those things that is sort of everywhere, and therefore it ends up sort of being nowhere. It's the sea that we swim in a lot of ways, and as a result, it is both the cause and the cure for some aspects of the soul sickness. We have become immersed in a materialist culture. As religion has become less and less a part of most people's lives, materialism has stepped in to fill that void for a lot of people. What can I buy? What can I consume? And we have to break the hold of that. And the mindset, to me, a lot of it is about your mindset. And people who find their way here, for the most part, have been able to see through that false god of materialism. But we carry a lot of that chain along with us. So why we want to do that? I mean, we want to be able both to build wealth, because money, like anything else, money is a tool, and you want to be able to build wealth. And I'll give you pointers along the way as we go, but every dollar you spend, you should think of it as an investment. Is this the highest and best way to use to make transportation? Is this the highest way to feed my family? Those are the kinds of things that if you, and there's a difference between being a miser and being frugal. I mean, being frugal just means that you get the most for your money. There's nothing wrong with drinking good beer or drinking nice coffee, but you just want to get the most out of it. Energy drinks are evil, though. Exactly. See, consumed by the monster corporation. So here in a few minutes, we're going to talk about budgeting. Both as a tool, because most people, and I never did until I started working in this arena, but it helps to think of your money in an organized way. Nick, if we're ready, let's put that first form up on the screen, the income screen, and people can print it, I guess, we can make it available for download or whatever. But one of the things that you need to be able to do, sorry, the dog's barking. One of the things that you need to be able to do is know what your gross income is and your net income. What do you make? Over a 12-month average, what is your monthly income like? So what can you expect to earn and have, week over week, month over month? That's what you have to be able to spend out of. And on these worksheets, I've got some tips from how to get to, from your gross income, what you're paid as your salary, or, from your business income, to get all the way down to your net income. And the net income is what's available for you to be able to spend for your, living expenses. And then out of those living expenses, you have to work together. Here's the page. The way that I like to think about it is that you start from your necessities. Okay. Your mortgage payment, your utilities, what you spend from. There you go. Perfect. You spend those things first. You take your total net income, whatever that is, and you spend your necessities, whatever your mortgage payment is, your utilities, What do you spend on groceries? What are your healthcare expenses? Those are the kinds of things that come out before your discretionary expenses. Your car insurance. I'm going to try to talk you out of having a car payment, but at some point that, that has been the bane of all our existences. If you have children, they have school expenses. Those are the kinds of things that you have to budget for, so that you know ahead of time what you're going to have left over when it's all said and done. If you have life insurance, that is a good expense. If you're a young adult with a couple of kids, you're doing your family a disservice if you don't have life insurance. And again, then you come down, if you have a car payment, I'll try to talk you out of that in a way that we can discuss in the Q&A later. But then, so you work down through these reasonable monthly living expenses. Those are the kinds of things that you take, that your gross, whatever's, whatever that, we'll talk about wills. So you take from your net income through your living expenses, and that leaves you a disposable income. And for a lot of people, if you're living on a pretty tight budget, then there may not be a lot of disposable income left over. But that is an important question to know the answer to too. If your net disposable income is $100 a month, then that puts you in one place. But if you're $1,000 a month, that puts you in a different place. So there are two ways to live out from this budget. Thank you, Nick. There are two ways to get out from under that budget. One is to make more. And I don't say that facetiously at all. Be the guy, if you're working in a job, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I spent a long time as a wage employee. I showed up early. I stayed late. I did more than the boss asked me. I got promoted. Those are the kinds of things that get you into a higher income bracket. You also save money. And there are ways to get there. Saving your money, but investing is an important part. As the old hack has it, Jesus saves, but Moses invests. And so that's how we get, by having side income. And, not everybody can get together enough money to have like for example, a rental property. But if you could get those sorts of things, and it takes some work to get where you have rental income. He owes you time off. Okay. Did we miss that part? I broke the internet. So nobody owes you some lifestyle that you think you're entitled to. You have to get out there and get it. And that's about the philosophy of money, because the philosophy of it is both carrot and stick. You have to have the ability to want more, to get out there and get more. Or you can just live with less. There is absolutely nothing wrong with living a very modest lifestyle, and keeping a realistic expectation, with the goal being that you want to have make the most out of whatever it is that you are earning. So covered that. So then a couple of tips. And then we'll go to questions and talk for a while longer about these sorts of topics. But certainly for me, one of the things that I'm an older guy, so I'm used to. I lived in an age before there was all this internet money, all these money systems like that. But we're even and it took me, maybe because of the job that I do, it took me a long time to get used to even having a credit card. But certainly one of the tips for saving money is to take that money that you have at the end of the month, that disposable income that you have after your living expenses are paid. You take that disposable income and you put that amount of cash into an envelope, and you spend until you try to have some money left over in that envelope when it's all said and done. You put that, you have your cash set aside, and you spend cash, because it's a lot harder to take money out of your pocket than it is to swipe that credit card or debit card. Especially the debit card is too, in a lot of ways is that evil invention, because, it takes no effort to swipe that debit card $10, $15, $20. Spending $20 is the same as spending $4 out of the debit card. It's the same swipe every time. Whereas, taking that $20 bill out of your pocket, it's a different kind of decision. Do I need that kind? Am I going to spend this money for this thing? It makes me cringe when I drive. Every time I drive by, and I don't want to pick on Starbucks. I don't hate them any worse than I hate any other corporation. But you drive by a Starbucks, there's 30 people in line waiting to spend $9 to get a cup of coffee. They could make it home for 50 cents. And that makes, it just doesn't mark up with me. I mean, I've got, I drink a couple cups of coffee a day. I make them before I leave the house. I make one at the office. So even if you're getting your coffee at I don't guess there are Zippy Marts anymore. What is it? The Circle K, that cup of coffee that you get at the Circle K that costs $2.50, you can make it home for 20 cents. And another big thing, and this is one where I finally brought a lot of discipline into my life, is eating out, and especially for lunch. That lunch that you go out and spend $10, $15 now at a fast food place. That's a lunch you could make at home for $2. So, if you save $5 a day, every working day, $25 a week, that's $1,200 a year that you could put aside to put a down payment on a house, or to pay off the debts that you have. So it is absolutely critical that you spend money closer to the vest. And when you don't have to work until you're, 70, 80 years old, so that you don't have to worry about whether you're going to be able to pay your bills on time, because you drain your bank account all the way to the bottom every month. Those are the kinds of things that make you live a more comfortable lifestyle, just an easier lifestyle. And those will allow you to have more peace of mind. That's what a lot of all of this stuff is about to me, is being able to live an easier, more comfortable lifestyle. And one of the things I harp on with a lot of people is about car payments. Maintenance is a lot cheaper than a car payment. It saddens me, really, the way that car payments go $500, $600, $700 a month. Now I have clients that come in now that have $750, $850 a month car payments. And it's just, it's hard to dig that much money out of your work life. That's your time that you're giving to some big corporation so that you can drive a slightly newer, slightly nicer car. I mean, I've got the two cars that I have. One of them's a 2010 Ford truck, and the other one's a 2011 Toyota. So, and I keep them maintained. You put $200 a month in that Toyota, it's going to live forever. And that's my goal, is to drive it until there's 600,000 miles left. By then I could save up enough money to buy by then a 2015 Toyota or whatever it is that's going to be a decent replacement of that. Car just gets you from place to place. Nobody cares what your car looks like. Okay. As long as you get to work on time and as long as your family is safe and comfortable getting from place to place, you don't need a new car, new enough. It will get you there. In Florida, you need air conditioning. Is that me fading out, or is that me dropping? Sorry, I don't know why that keeps doing that.
We'll just blame it on the panhandle snow.
That's it. Well, we were without power for 14 hours, but so there you go. That was my house this morning, or I guess that was my deck, the view out my deck this morning. So 3 inches of sleet last night and no power.
You're still good, so you feel time.
I know I don't want to mess up his flow. I know he's got a presence.
16 hours.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, and I was talking even when my picture was out, so I'm not sure that's what was hurting anything. If you have kids, all of this, a lot of this stuff becomes a lot more difficult to navigate. I'll say it that way. We made sacrifices to allow my wife to stay home with the kids because I believe that that's an important aspect of healthy childhood. The house that we bought was in terrible condition, and we put a lot of our time and effort into doing that sort of work ourselves so that the equity that we built on that was not equity that came from my having to pay somebody else to do it. It's equity that we put in by being able to do stuff like paint and do minor reconstruction work and electrical work that I can do, and those sorts of things that able to get us into a better position than we could have been with, if I was having to hire everything done. I used to work on my own cars, but I wouldn't try to do that anymore. Everything's computerized. So you gotta be good friends with your mechanic so that he doesn't overcharge you. But those are the kinds of things that allow you to live a good lifestyle out of the budget that you make instead of having to kill yourself to try to make more. I used to laugh at because I would look at my income and look in our newspaper. If you remember what a newspaper was, that I used to get but the newspaper that I got, they would have a little grid every month. Like if you're making X dollars per month, you could qualify for this much house payment. And I thought it was absurd. And I think it is absurd the way that the banks will loan you into bankruptcy because they will bust your budget trying to get you to pay too much for a house. And yes, theoretically you could make it. If you sit in the dark and eat rice and beans 3 nights a week, you could make the house payment that they think you can qualify for, but that is not a quality lifestyle. I know people, I've had contractors that have come to me that talk about a lot of the houses in the richer neighborhoods, the wealthier neighborhoods around Tallahassee, where the people who they're having to put so much into their house payment that they don't have money for furniture. So they have this super nice house on a super nice street and they're living on furniture that's that's just awful, plastic furniture and dormitory style, what's the thing, milk crates, that they're eating off of, because they listen to a banker, they listen to a mortgage lender that let them qualify for a house that they really can't afford. You have to live below your means, live something that you can, like with that budget worksheet that I showed you. If when you spend your way down, you can also work your budget backwards. You can say, all right, once I spend these other items, this much for food, this much for my car payment, this much for my car insurance, how much do I have left over for a mortgage payment? Can I pay $2,200 a month for mortgage payment? No. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. And what ends up happening then, if you overbuy on a car, if you overbuy on a house, then you end up putting some of your regular monthly living expenses onto credit cards, and that's where you get sucked into the black hole of debt. And it's really hard to get out of that once you get dug into that position. It's really difficult to come back from putting $200, $300, $600 a month on a credit card, and then pretty soon you're $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in debt. And there's no way, I guess there's a way to do it, but it is really hard to dig out from that kind of hole. So, and then beyond that, a couple of other tips. A lot of it, to me, the frugal lifestyle to me is about mindset. That's one of the things, and people, you're this time.
Okay, so Alan,
so
you cut off at frugal mindset.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Frugal mindset, and it could be that the ice is still interfering with our internet over here. So, frugal mindset to me is, again, keeping goals right in front of you, spending cash, not swiping a debit card. But one of the things, and it seems like a small thing, and maybe it is, but saving nickels. And I don't mean like nickel increments. I mean like the literal coin, the nickel. Okay. The literal nickel coin is worth like 7 cents right now. The copper and nickel that's in a nickel is worth more than 5 cents. So if every day, like one of the things that I do every day when I come home, I take all the nickels out of my change and I throw them in the nickel jug. And it's just one of those ways that I have of keeping myself focused on saving money, building wealth. Those are the kinds of things that will put you ahead instead of keeping you behind on and staying just breaking even, because you want to be able to take a breath once in a while. So that's sort of my presentation. I am absolutely open to sitting here for a couple of hours and taking questions about how to do budgeting, how to do wills, how to get out from under if you are under, how to make more out of the money that you're making. My time is yours.
All right, well, thank you for that. I hope people take advantage of it because there's a tremendous value. We have an expert here. A couple of things that I wanted to say, but I didn't want to interrupt to say them. With your preamble, I think a lot of people may not fully realize, and I'd like for them to, that religion, when done right, Asatru in specific, is about a holistic existence where all the aspects of your life, to the best of your ability, can synergize with one another towards right living. It's easy to conceive of things as overtly religious that involve prayer or ritual or time at a Hof, but in Asatru, the saying that we are our deeds is easy to say, but sometimes I don't think we think of all those implications. So you're Asatru in the way you're an Asatru husband, you're an Asatru father, you're an Asatru son, you're an Asatru friend, you're an Asatru boss, you're an Asatru employee. You live your faith in all the ways that you do things in your life. And by being able to be successful, that furthers your efficacy to do the other aspects of your life and to be, to live our values, industriousness, perseverance, self-reliance. So many of these values come into play specifically through our ability to be successful. And I think we think really often of money as some kind of taboo, bad thing, but it's not. It's a means to power in the world that we live in, where you can accomplish things that you want, where you can help causes that you value, you can help friends and family that you value. It very much is a spiritual concept. It's the first of our runes, Fehu. It's about wealth, and not just wealth in the sense of dollar bills or stacks of gold or cows, but in any ability to store up resource and then circulate said resource towards what you will it to do. It's a very relevant concept and something I would like for us to embrace as much as we can. So we have a couple of questions lining up. I would encourage you guys to ask some more, but the first, and feel free to answer this as vaguely or not at all if you don't want to, because it's really not people's business, but it's a relevant question, I think. So Finwraith would like to know, are you rich? Are there AFA members who are rich? Alan, are you rich?
No. I live a pretty frugal lifestyle. I still have a mortgage payment. So, to me, that is one of the marks of being rich, and that, in that sense, that's one of my own personal goals, is to try to get this house paid off. But these are relative terms. I have a rich abundance of friends, of which Matt and Nick I consider among. And so I have that richness going for me. I own 3 cars. So, I mean, that's pretty decent, I think. I have, a modest amount of personal property. So, but rich in the sense of that, like when I hear that term, I think of someone with a lot more wealth than I have. But I think that's what everybody does. I've seen some scales where, people who have, people who make $20,000 a year think people who make $40,000 a year are wealthy, and people at 40,000 think 80,000 is wealthy. So I would say that I was on my way to being wealthy before my wife got tired of putting up with my oddball sense of humor and whatever other issues I have that I could not identify on a bet. But and actually, I forgot to put it back in my notes, but that's actually one of the ways to stay wealthy is to stay married. And, that's not always easy. I know we live in this transitional age where people, where religion, politics, approaches to money can be divisive things. And I know that's one of the things that I think worked at some of the seams of our relationship. But it's sad that, that 2 incomes that can barely support one household, then, after a separation, have to support 2 households. I wish I wish my mom had lived closer to Tallahassee and I would have moved back in with her. I mean, there is absolutely nothing wrong with, that's why, like some of it, for a long time, I used to drive through these areas and, drive through downtown, and there are these huge, what I think of as mansions, 4, 5, 6,000 square foot houses. But, in when those homes were built, in the 1800s, 1900s, early 1900s, those houses held 3 generations of people. And, it was because people knew that the way to maintain wealth is to keep it in the family, literally. Be nicer to people so that so you can get along and, get so that you can, live that more comfortable lifestyle up close to people. That I wouldn't say I'm the best example of being able to do that, but I mean, I know it's a theoretical possibility.
Well, and that's something that I think folks need to, I think a lot of us make mistakes in our life, get ashamed of those mistakes, focus on those mistakes, and squander time and energy and everything else trying to run from them instead of trying to stop digging and correct them. And wherever you find yourself, you can don't always look at the end goal. Look at the immediacy. If you try, you can always be better than you are now, wherever that is. The best time to start is 20 years ago. The second best time is right now.
Absolutely. And the other thing is to be, when you're on the other side, when you are the aggrieved person, the thing to do is to be, this is not a term that I advocate a lot, but to be a little tolerant, especially of of your brother who errs in good faith. And I think that too is a symptom of the way that we, as the first, maybe, I'm among the first of what you might consider the television generation, where we were raised on sitcoms and movies, and you just get this idea that we can have this major problem and then we can get it all solved and get it all wrapped up, and then we're back to being best buddies all in an hour and 20 minutes. And that's just not realistic. You have to maintain frith with each other. You have to maintain love, which, Matt, that's a word that you like to use a lot. And I appreciate that, that it's a word that doesn't get used often enough in our faith or in the, in our civilization in general. But we have to, that's one of the approaches to being able to understand, as long as people are trying to do their best. But if they make a mistake, that's okay. Now, if somebody is doing the wrong thing for the wrong reason, that's a different part of the equation. But we have to be a little bit, thicker skinned about some of these things.
Well, 2 things I'd like to add. First, on the idea of letting things slide and having some forgiveness. I've said this on the program many times, but for anybody who maybe it's the first time they're hearing it or who needs a reminder, and I think this is worth reminding all of us, including ourselves. Asatru is not a reaction to Christianity. Sometimes people find Asatru and then, Christians forgive. We don't forgive it. That's nonsense and it's silly. One of the fundamentals of our folk, of our race, of our faith is nobility. The point is you have an option to extend grace and forgiveness to someone you choose to. You're not obliged to. Asatru don't owe anybody forgiveness if you don't want to. But it's a mark of nobility for you being able to rise above pettiness and extend that in accordance with your will and with, your judgment as a noble man or woman. And I think that's something we should consider. But also, back to, is Alan rich? So, well, no, because your point was really valid. one of the reasons that Alan is in fact rich is the fact that Alan does not think Alan is rich. If you have low expectations and then you achieve them and then you sit atop them and crow about them, that limits you in a tremendous way. Everybody thinks, everybody's got people they look up to or a status or a place they want to be. If you ever find yourself, you have achieved the ultimate end all goal of everything in your life and you stop, chances are very, very good that you are delusional and you are preventing yourself from making additional gains in your life. But I will say this, reason he's on the program talking about what he's talking about, most of the rest of us in the AFA think Alan is well off, is wealthy. Rich is kind of a loaded term. Like, I don't think he has a money bin that he dives into, but yeah, he's been very successful, whether he, whether he is claiming it or not. The rest of us acknowledge it and, are respectful that he's got some stuff figured out. And the second half of the question was, are there rich AFA members? Really depends on what you mean. We have got members from all across the economic spectrum. I would say we have a higher percentage of financially successful membership now than we've had in the past. We certainly have, a percentage of members that are very well off in their life, have their stuff figured out, have had a very successful career, have saved up, have a lot of means. We have quite a few that way. Got a lot of people below that. We got a lot of people in between, and we've got a lot of people that are really struggling. But yeah, we absolutely do have some AFA members that are very well off. I don't think we have, billionaire members or tens of millionaire members, but I would bet that we've got several members that their combined assets are, a couple million or more. Some other stuff kind of stacking up.
That's
here.
A good point to transition talking about wills.
Well, we're going to get there because that's on my list, and I interrupted your thing by trying to remind myself, not realizing you're reading the comments just as much as I am. Before we go further, Alexander, thank you very much. He bought us 3 coffees. That's $15 worth of donation. Thank you so much for that. We appreciate all you guys that have been so generous on the program and continue to do so.
And thank you, Alexander, for your example of being such a hard, industrious worker, man. You are knocking some stuff out and yours off. So we are grateful for that as well.
For those of you who don't know, Alexander Casto is a apprentice folk builder for the Asatru Folk Assembly out of the, greater Jacksonville, Florida area. And he is doing a tremendous job so far in a lot of different ways. And we very much appreciate the hard work you're doing, Alexander. Thank you. Gothi Trent East would like to know, Lawspeaker, what was it about the AFA that made you want to join and commit so much of your life to its success?
Back in my day, I will say that I was raised as a religious person. And then, so religion was a big part of my life as a child. But then when I came into a young adulthood and began to question those sorts of things, especially when it became important to me, the idea of philosophical consistency. I had to have an integrated worldview so that my science and my philosophy and my religion all matched up in a complete framework that was compatible together. Wandered far away from Christianity and then found Asatru. Started practicing with the groups that were around at that time. There were some groups in Florida, some groups in the Southeast that I got a lot of benefit out of and made a lot of association with. High Bodhi. We got to know some of the folk, and And then in 2010, in the state park right across the street from where our Hoff is now, of, see, that wasn't me that we.
Okay, you were still in the midst, but you were telling a poignant story, so we're going to rewind to it when we get you back. Trying to give Lawspeaker a second here because I would like to hear his tale from 2010. Hopefully he will be back joining us very shortly.
So the first time, that was Matt's.
Okay, so while we figure, all right, he's popping. I'm sorry, guys. We're having some technical difficulties. We're trying to sort it out as best we can. A variety of still frames of Allen in various poses. That's entertaining. In the meantime, I'm going to look and see if there's stuff that I can just kind of pop on about that we're talking about. I'm going to wait till that's a little bit more secure. Sorry, guys. I'm looking for stuff over in the side to get on about. Okay, something else I'm going to bring up and talk about until we get him back on, and then we'll get him back to the questions. One thing that I've seen a lot with our folks, and I noticed this in the way we speak, and I've also noticed it in the way that we conceive of stuff. One of the things that I've seen be the most difficult for our people is they don't have a eye to the future. They don't believe it's possible for them to be successful long term. So they become chocolatey rich in the way that they spend their money when they get it, because if they get a lump sum, or they get they're working a seasonal job and they get a big payout, they will take that and immediately spend it on cars or nonsense, because they don't see the point in saving it if they don't feel like, that's a lifestyle choice. So they blow it on irresponsible purchases because that's maybe the only time they're ever going to see a big paycheck. And that is very understandable psychologically. But I've watched people go through, these perpetual feast and famine periods in their life because they're not looking at the long game. They've already given up the long game, so they're just trying to win the day to day. And that's unfortunate. It speaks to the soul sickness of our folk. It speaks to some of the problems going on, but you absolutely can win and be successful. It may be more challenging for you today in the environment you're in. It may be less so. I don't know your circumstance, your family's circumstance, but there's lots of opportunities to win and be successful. When I see Allen continue to move and not glitch up, we will get back to his story, because I think it was a good story he's about to tell us. He set the stage. It was 2010, and then interference occurred. You look normalized. Will you tell us what happened in 2010?
Well, I was the sponsor of Moot that in the old days, and again, back in the, back when those of us who were hewing this path, we used to have only an annual gathering here in Florida. It was actually for the entire Southeast. And so I met Steve McNallen at a Moot that I was sponsoring, running. He showed me Asatru in a way that was more integrated in the way that we talk about it, where it's, where it is the whole lifestyle of, where it's not just, plucking your religion from this shelf and plucking your philosophy from somewhere else. And that was the beginning of my path to what I now understand to be the traditionalist way of viewing these sorts of things. I know that a lot of us are familiar with Julius Evola and his writings, many of the other traditionalists, who I agree with in greater or lesser extent. But one of the things that Mr. McNallen showed me is the idea that this is all one integrated thing. He set me on that life path where
All right. Well, we're getting this story in bits and pieces, so we
my
can all
religion is powerful right
anticipate
now.
the follow up. All right. All right.
Sorry, it may be my internet, but I don't think so.
So in 2010, our founder, Steve McNallen, showed you that this is an integrated, holistic life path. And that's where we got with the story on why you're here and why you've chosen to prioritize this so much. Is that where we're at?
Absolutely. And then so the feeling that I got and continue to receive from the interactions that I have with what I try to think of it as the way. This is just the way. Asatru is the name that we call it, but this is the way that we, certainly I am not Norse. I mean, I am Saxon by derivation, so my people certainly wouldn't have called it Asatru. It was just it was just the way. We have our gods, we practice our way, and I think that it is a way that has been successful in the worldview. I think all of the best things of Western civilization, even things like understanding and tolerance and those sorts of things, those are Germanic ideas. One of the books in the Gothi program, I guess it's still in there, the Germanization of Christianity, where it shows that that one of the reasons that Christianity became the dominant religion in the world is the way that Christianity integrated with the Germanic worldview, and those two tools together became what is now Western civilization. So, and I think all the best parts of Christianity are things that derive directly from its adaptation of the Germanic tribal practice. So, and that's what so that's the way that I view these things, is how can, one of the things that I try to do is eliminate as much as possible contradictory thoughts in my head. Cognitive dissonance is the term for that, where you try to hold two opposing views in your head, right? Like, well, and biblical Christianity is one of those things that created that for me, because in order to believe that Christ is an important figure in your religious aspect of things, you have to believe that the earth was created 6,000 years ago. And I couldn't continue to believe that. So, certainly also true. Our worldview is compatible with science. It is compatible with compassion for animals, which, I like to eat animals, but I also think that they should live a better lifestyle than factory farming, which is only about maximizing profit. So there are, all those sorts of things can be brought into a worldview that is consistent with compassion for living things, while also realizing that it's okay to kill things under appropriate circumstances. And a corporation is another thing. Like, a corporation can be a tool for a small businessman to be able to run his business in a way that protects him. But when corporate capitalists become in charge of the entire economic system, that is not a good thing. So we need to put some checks and balances on that program.
What about wills? So folks may not know, I have been harping on people to get their will done for a number of years now. This is the man that I try to get everyone to send said wills to, or at least a notarized original copy to. I have found a place called doyourownwill.com, I believe. I think Nick's still got the link. Yes, doyourownwill.com. It is that simple. It is exactly what it says. It is legit in all 50 states. There's no reason, and I'm going to let Alan get on this in a second, but I want to mention it is unfortunate. One of the experiences being the Alzheimer's Gothi is being very aware of when we lose members of our AFA family. And sometimes we lose them to entirely preventable and sad circumstances. And sometimes it's just the course of things that people, grow old and pass away. But in each of those extremes and everything in between, we've had members that pass away that don't have wills. And there is a variety of outcome at that point. Sometimes people have family that are very in tune with what the deceased would have wanted or expressed that they wanted, make sure they have that. And that's wonderful. But there's a lot of circumstances that hasn't been the case. I think one member in specific, his parents had recently converted to Judaism, and his remains are forever interred in a Jewish cemetery. And I know that's very contrary to what he would have wanted. But if you don't make your will and you don't make sure that it's in the hands of people who can advocate for you, you can't have that. And I don't want people to have that. So Alan, would you talk to the fine folks a little bit about wills, why they should have them, how they should get them, and what they should do with them?
I will. And I haven't worked through that doyourownwill.com, but I assume and that the people who run that site have done their homework. And so there are a couple of important things when it comes to having your last wishes honored. Certainly the existence of a will allows you to dictate to the maximum extent possible how your property is distributed. I want my library to go to Matt. I want my bicycle to go to my sister. And absolutely.
So as you contemplate where you want your libraries and bicycles to go, we will await the law speaker's further instructions on this. It is a really
I want my last.
Okay, he's starting to come back in now. We talked about the disposition of your bicycle when we last had you.
Right, and certainly your last, the way that your bodily remains are dealt with is absolutely a topic for the way that your will, a topic for what you can include in your will. If you have children, you absolutely need a will so that your children can be raised by people that that you can appoint a guardian for your children. These are important topics that, in my opinion, you're doing that's $250 well spent to go to an attorney, even if it's just to say, I went to this website, I prepared this will, does this look okay? And have a lawyer say, just edit their way through it. I'm not that lawyer. I'm certainly glad to act as a repository of properly executed wills, but I am not qualified to give you, other than lay advice on things that you can do that you can and can't include in a will. There are attorneys who specialize in that, and it's important. And again, if you have an estate, and when I say an estate, I mean if you have
$20, $30, $40,000 worth of personal property, it's worth talking to an attorney to make sure that that gets distributed properly. And it's also, if you have kids, it's important to talk to people that would be the guardian of those children. Are you willing to raise my children the way that I want you to do it? And then you name them as the guardians in the will. And if you don't, in your will, or if you don't have a will, we, as your protectors of your faith, cannot intervene between you and your family. So if you die without a will, your family is in charge of what happens to your remains. And maybe that's okay. And certainly not the end of the world to end up in a family cemetery to be buried next to your grandparents and their grandparents and all of that. And that's a noble, admirable thing. It used to be the way of all of us. But in this disjointed society, if you don't have a family cemetery plot somewhere, there's no reason in the world why you can't join your brothers and sisters of the faith in one of our columbariums.
So everybody knows, we have the remains. We have remains interred at Thorshof, at Odenshof, at Njordshof, and at Sigerheim. We don't yet at Baldershof, just because that situation hasn't arisen, but there's absolutely a plan for cremated remains to be housed there, should that be something that you'd like to do. Question that I have, and I think other people have, what is the right thing to do if you have a will to make sure that in the event of your death, folks know about it and it gets executed? Because I wonder if there's a bunch of people that have wills that are sitting, in their closet somewhere gathering dust that nobody knows about when these decisions get made.
It's funny. I had a friend in high school who had his will made up, which I thought was like the craziest thing, but he had it, he had last will and testament written on this envelope, and then like all this colored magic marker around it, and it just sat out on his desk. So like if he was, and the lifestyle that he lived, it would not have been impossible to come in and find him overdosed from one of the things that he used to indulge himself in. And then his will was like within reach of where he was, would have been laying there. So that's certainly one way to do it. Another way is to make sure that I have a copy of it, because again, as our faith community strengthens and grows, if somebody dies and I have a copy of the will, then we can get into we can enter into the discussion immediately, so that your will, so that your last wishes can be honored. That's so, and especially if you can see it coming, like if you're in some lingering illness, you can tell your spouse, you can tell your buddies, you can tell me. I don't have to have a copy of it. I know there are members of the AFA who have made provisions. I don't have a copy of it that I don't have a copy of, but as long as your friends know, as long as your family knows, here's the repository. My lawyer has a copy of the will, and then as soon as you step off this mortal coil, then that those wishes can start to be implemented. That's it's not about the piece of paper; it's about what you want to happen with both with your stuff and with your remains. And the way to do that is to distribute that information to people that you trust.
Yeah, the more people who know about it, the better, and know a source to go to. It's something that's absolutely happens. When a member passes away, I ask Alan, even if I assume it's not the case, I just check. Hey, so-and-so passed away. By any chance, did they send you a will?
No.
That has not been the circumstance yet, but I asked just in case, because that is really important to us. And don't think that's some kind of a strange thing. Like, it doesn't matter what is in there. You can do what you want with your stuff, with your remains, with how you want to do it. but we are very, very committed to wanting to make sure you have what you want done, especially in your final will and testament. Um,
Because we as Gothar and especially the superstructure, we are here to do what, to serve you and to make, that's the way that one of the important tenets of this faith is to be remembered. And one of the best ways to do that is to leave a legacy, either a headstone at the at one of our cemeteries, or you know, dedicate a wing of Sigerheim to your um, you could build the AFA Memorial Hospital there in Gainesboro. That would be awesome.
that would be spectacular, but really and truly, and it's such an unforced error. We have had people who are terminally ill and saw it coming for a long time and told us things that they wanted, but didn't make a will, and their family had different ideas. And that's what was done with their remains and their assets, because it wasn't written down, and that's really unfortunate. We've also had people who, have chosen to take their own life without going through that step of letting folks know what they want done with things, and that's also left them and perhaps those that depended on them in a very bad way. So please do, I have seen elderly people that see it coming a mile away, that have long-term diseases that could get these things taken care of. But I've also seen young people with every reason and every expectation to live another 50 years, to where tragedy strikes. It's never too soon to get it taken care of. And if you are a parent, please get it taken care of so that you can make sure your kids are raised in the way that you want them raised.
Death stalks us all, and so we should be as prepared as possible.
Absolutely. Another question. So say you wrote a monthly budget, stopped eating out, make coffee at home, go thrifting instead of buying new at box chains, no car note, do all of that stuff, yet still paycheck to paycheck. What then?
The only other, well, first of all, congratulations, you're living within your means. That's the first step. Because if you're doing it the other way, coffee out, going to the big box store to buy whatever unnecessary stuff that you're buying, then you're going into the hole every month. The only other, and so the rest of that answer is you have to make more money. And again, that's I don't say that lightly. I know that that jobs that people get and develop momentum in have limitations in the earning capability, but there are lots of, and I hate the term, but that's the modern parlance of it, is the side hustle. You can get a part-time job. I have clients who work 3 jobs in order to make their bills work, because whether it's taking a second part-time job, like as a cashier at a grocery store or some, or driving for Uber or Lyft or whatever, or whether it's finding some other thing that you're good at and like to do. And sometimes it's the oddest thing. Like I had a client who one of his income streams was he played the cello. And so he had recorded some cello music and had uploaded it to, I don't think it was Pandora, or YouTube, but it was one of those live streaming things. And so that was, like he had residual income from that. Now that it was only like $30, $40, $50 a month, but that's the kind of thing where he liked doing it. And it gave him a little bit of extra money. If you like building things out of wood, you can make little, there's stuff. You can make bookends. I mean, look at the stuff that like, oh God, I can't, that comes into the AFA auctions. The beautiful artwork that people make, crocheting, needlepoint, those are the kinds of things that can be sold. I mean, you can go to the flea market and sell those sorts of things. And okay, and again, I know it's not easy to, to make that next nickel over and above that, but that's what it takes. You know, I worked 2 jobs all the way through law school. So, it you got to do what you got to do, and then you can complete your education. That's another big part of it. Um, the bachelor's degree now is like the aptitude test used to be. And I know it's going without work or going with a minimum work style for the 4 years or 6 that it takes to get a bachelor's degree. But that's the key to get into the door, to get into management. For a long time, I thought I was going to work and I welded, did electrical work. So, because I was going to be the noble proletarian and work for my living. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that if you can get into a professional career like being a plumber or a HVAC tech or those sorts of things that require training. Those are highly paid, skilled labor. But the grunt labor welding that I was doing was not going to get me anywhere. So what it did is put me back in school. And, so by getting in school and being pretty diligent about my education, I was able to, climb the ladder into self-employment. Wasn't easy, but but by being frugal and living a pretty modest lifestyle, I've become rich. I mean, modestly well off.
Well, something else I'd like to say I don't see our people doing in large number, and other communities are very successful at, and many of our ethnic communities when they first immigrated here from Europe were very successful at. We have bought into this hyper individualism that's really weakened a lot of our potential, us functioning as a community. And it's one thing that I want to see more, specifically more AFA members doing. Being willing to work together and help each other to accomplish your dreams on stuff. If you're really at that spot where you've cut out everything you can, you don't know how to squeeze any more out of it, and you're still paycheck to paycheck. And this is way more feasible sometimes for single people or younger people that are just getting their feet under them, but going in together on something and pooling resources to where you're, sharing stuff, sharing a space to live, getting a business together and employing friends, keeping your money and your resources in your faith community to help others with jobs and things. And we've seen, recently, all of us have seen the Indian community do this really effectively, of going in like, hey, let's get 10 of us to go in on this motel. We can live here. It's got a kitchen. It's got places for us to sleep, places for us to stay. We can work shifts. And once we're, getting rich off of it, because it takes off, we can use that to then fund the next guy's thing that they're doing, and the next and the next. And it's a really successful model, but we've gotten so jaded at being part of a community or, sharing our abilities, that I think we miss out on a lot of that opportunity. And again, the older you get and with families and things, it makes that much more difficult, but it's something I wish more of our people would consider. We got another question. Lawspeaker, knowing what you know about debt and such, who do you personally think are solid mainstream financial pundits / writers, such as Dave Ramsey, etc.?
Dave Ramsey's certainly one that I recommend. That's where I get a lot of my tips from. I think he has a lot of good ideas. I don't recommend as stringent a budget as Dave does. especially if you're already in debt. I've heard him recommend to people that they give up their car and then try to pay off the difference, which I think is backwards thinking. But
Rice and beans, beans and rice.
that's right, beans and rice, buddy. But you don't want to keep paying for a car that you don't have. Um, uh, and then Rich Dad Poor Dad. That book also is a really good resource for again and actually one of the books I listened to preparing for tonight is just called The Philosophy of Money. Now he gets off into talking about investment, and like so the last half of the book I didn't get as much out of, but to get to the point of where because I don't and everybody has their own view of the way that these things work. So I'll tell you another pointer that has worked well for me. I have a small little piece of a couple of local businesses here, and it's just I've met friends through clubs and whatever, social clubs, not the bar scene, but but I got to know some people. I trusted them, and so I have like a car dealer here in town where we buy and sell cars together. Okay, so I have a couple of cars. I sell a couple of cars under his license every year, and so again, but to get there, even then, I mean, you could work a deal like that, to have for a low end car dealer, for a low end vehicle, you could get in there for $2,000 or $3,000, and you sell that $3,000 car for 4,000, and then you sell that $4,000 car for 6,000, and the next thing you know, you're a thousandaire. But that's what it takes. Actually, years ago, I read that to turn $100,000 into $110,000 is a matter of course, but to turn $100 into $110 is work. But that's what you have to do. You like these guys, and I don't like street hustles as a general rule, but these people that are out here selling flowers on the corner, right? They bought those flowers somewhere and they're selling them. So they're doing their little part to make a side hustle and to make a little bit of money that they wouldn't have otherwise. And they're not sitting around bemoaning their fate. They're getting out there and doing something about it. So those are the three that come immediately to mind. Dave Ramsey has made a career, and rightly so, out of giving people advice on that case by case basis. I'm glad to talk to you and give you like the 6-minute version of what I usually take an hour going through with my clients. But I will help you do budgeting and those sorts of things. It's a difficult process if you haven't done it before, but it can be rewarding to turn that into something a little bit more than what you had just by. And I don't want people focus. The opposite of that, and the wrong way to look at it is to end up being too driven by money. People who money becomes their god. That is the wrong way to do it. Money is a tool that can put you in a comfortable place to live the thing that's important to me is to live a spiritual lifestyle. And the money that I have made and continue to make by running this thing is allows me to get up and meditate every morning.
Yeah, I don't know, at different times, I feel like Dave Ramsey's stuff has helped me and my family on just, righting the ship and getting a spot where you're comfortable. Progress is progress, and everything doesn't have to happen all at once. One of the things that I like the most is the idea that if you have lots and lots of debts, instead of dispersing all of your resources to a variety of things, if you put it all towards clearing the small debts, or, depending upon how things are set up, you're able to see progress. One of the hardest things with accomplishment in general is we all have a really big goal in mind, be that a fitness goal. I've seen this with weight loss. You get somebody who's spent 30 years in really poor health, allowed themselves to get very obese, and then they want to immediately fix it, and they try so hard, and they try for months, and they're trying, and they don't see a difference. The distance between where they want to be and where they are is so hard. I'm a big fan of stats and metrics and things so you can see incremental progress. And if you've got a stack of debts, having one less, that's something. That's a win you can bank on, and literally bank on, and you can take some peace of mind in, and it gives you confidence to go after the next big one you go after. But
And it gives you that sense of accomplishment where, you look at last month, like 3 months ago, I only had $20 in the bank. This month I've got $100 in the bank. I don't, that's hard to do. If you're, when you're living thin like that, it's hard to make that sort of adjustment. And like you said, with the person who's has a lot of weight to lose, and if they think, well, I haven't lost 100 pounds, so I'm not doing anything, but to think, well, I lost 2 pounds, so I'm making progress. You got to, that's part of the psychology of money, is you have to think in small steps. I'm better now than I was. I've got more in my bank than I have one less debt this month than I had 6 months ago. Those are, so pat yourself on the back for those sorts of things. I'll tell you, and as I talked about before, I make my practice of law is about filing bankruptcy. And in the way back when I started this practice, I admit that I felt a little bit bad about burning these banks down. I thought, people, you made this debt, you ought to pay it. But man, I've come 180 about that now. These, predatory, I think every bank is a predatory lender. I think every loan is crime against humanity. I mean, it's, I know that we're enmeshed in it, and there's not an easy way to get from where we are to where we ought to be. But I'm also aware of the guy, like the maxim that to a guy with a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. But if you are struggling to pay your bills and you're spending more of your income than you're comfortable doing, paying toward your debt, if you have $20,000 credit card debt, it's time to think about filing bankruptcy. And I can't make money off of your bankruptcy, so I don't care one way or the other. In any kind of, like, it's not going to make me any money for, but it's something to think about, because, and this is one of the other things that, like, in the political ramification of the way that we live our lives, we try to live lives of honor and nobility, that, and with those sorts of ideals in the back of our mind. But the rest of the world, the corporate world, they don't live that. Okay. And so there is nothing false about returning a lie for a lie. And so, if you're feeling frustrated about not being able to pay those sorts of bills, I would not hesitate to burn those guys down in a bankruptcy.
It's one of those things. And something that's a couple of things. I've spent a lot of my life doing counseling or working with people. I've done a lot in my capacity as a Gothi, but before that, I used to work with children that were considered severely emotionally disturbed, and these kids had seen really, really rough things in their life. And there's this soft and I think really well-intentioned thing of coddling and telling them everything's awesome and everybody's a winner and all of these things to try to make them feel good. But reality has a way of stripping away things that are without substance very swiftly and shot in a shockingly brutal way. But you can't take away real things. The most subtle, small, insignificant win doesn't matter what horrible things happen afterwards. That kid can say, yeah, but in 2004, I was the best speller in Mrs. Johnson's second grade class. That remains true once it's in the record books, no matter what happens. And it seems little and silly, but I've literally seen that make a world of difference. If you're struggling and you make something happen, that you get a win in the win column, that counts. You always have that, and you can look back and how did you make that happen? Let's try that again on the next thing. And it sounds really small, but it can make a very big difference. And the other thing is getting to people to stop digging, especially, what's this, on the sunk cost fallacy, where you get, and we all have found ourselves doing this. You make a bad choice, you invest in something you shouldn't have, and then you realize, uh-oh. And so you put more on it just in case. Well, man, maybe if I can float it just a little bit longer at a loss, something will happen. And eventually you build up so much crushing embarrassment, and like you can't accept the loss, that you keep throwing in good money after bad. And that is a very human thing that I think all of us have felt at one time or another, in financial situations, in relationships.
If I just keep digging, I'm gonna find the bottom of this hole.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, miracles happen. I can't say that won't happen. If you spend all your money on lotto tickets, you might just win. But I think that the good odds, the vast majority of who, there's only a handful of winners. There's a whole lot of people who lose. To get you to stop, and this is all to say, one of the biggest things when you find yourself struggling, stop digging, stop making it worse. And if you're in a spot where you can, and you have to go to somebody like Allen and, turn in your hand and try to get a reshuffle, sometimes that's the smartest play.
Right.
Yeah, keep that in mind. Other stuff. So the 401k thing really confuses me, and I may have missed the touch on it he made because I was away from the phone with the kids. I recently found out my company is taking $180 a month for my 401k. I can opt out, but they do match, and I have been living fine without knowing that money was being taken. Should I keep putting it in since I can live without it, or try to diminish my contribution?
Well, so there's a long story about the philosophy of that sort of thing. If you're in that posture, I think a 401k is a reasonably good investment vehicle. Especially where they are matching it. So that $180, is really $360. So without knowing a whole lot more about the situation and your philosophy about it, I mean, because the other part of the question is like, is about risk aversion. Because, I would certainly investigate where that money is being invested. They're taking this 401k money and probably putting it into some sort of index fund. So if you're okay with, and again, a reasonably good index fund, which And an index fund is an investment vehicle where you have basically a share in the stock market. And as the stock market goes up, your investment goes up. If the stock market comes down, the value of your investment goes down. So the question, it seems like to me, the question then becomes like, if you had that $180 in your pocket, what would you do with it? Could you turn that $180 into $360 a month? And also it's tax deferred, which means that if you put that $180 back into your paycheck, now instead of $180, it's $160. And so now instead of $360 in a savings account that you will hopefully live long enough to get a big chunk of, now you have $160 that goes directly into your bank account. Now, if you could then turn that into something, if you paid down your debts, but if you're living without it, then it seems like to me that's probably the best use of that $180. I mean, again, without knowing a whole lot more, I wouldn't advise you to change that pivot. And again, that's one of those ways of living out of your budget, like what I talked about at the beginning of this discussion. If you can live without that $180, I mean, if that $180 was back in your bank account, I was back in your check, I'd be telling you to save that too, or pay off your mortgage with it or whatever. But if you're living without it and living well enough, I would leave it in there, because that $180 is really $360. And you'll get it eventually, or your kids will. Or you could adopt me and I'll take it.
There you go.
I'll share it with your kids fairly.
Keep that in mind. This man is up for adoption. Next question. Is it true if a person who owes money on credit cards dies, the debts disappear?
Yes and no. I mean, it depends on the laws of the state that you live in. For most people, their estate is such that and the estate, by the way, is just like all of your property. If you have $800 in the bank and you don't own anything else, you have a phone and a bed and $800, that is your estate when you die. And so that you can provide in your will that your just debts be paid, and so that that would be the executor of your will then would be obligated to pay those credit card debts. But if you say, I want any exempt, because each state has its own exemption. Like you can have X amount of property that passes to your heirs without your creditors being able to get their hands on it. And if you're under that exemption, then the answer is that your debts die with you, unless you provide otherwise in your will. So it's now getting into the topic of exemptions. There for most people who live paycheck to paycheck, you don't have anything that they can get unless you have wages that are subject to garnishment. But if you're retired and your only income is pension and or Social Security, and you don't, especially if you don't own a home, or if you have your home in a homestead exempt state, you don't have anything that these creditors can get. They can sue you and get a judgment, and they can't get any money from you. So you're not helping yourself, other than maybe stop the phone from ringing for a couple of months to pay those bills. But sorry, that I know that's more answer than the question was, but the general answer to that question, as a general rule, is yes, your debts die with you. Your credit card creditors cannot get any money out of your estate. Not true though for cars and mortgages.
So please feel free to continue to answer more than the question implies, because one of the things I'm always trying to keep in mind, and I hope that the listeners understand this too, because especially if I come at it with some kind of a reaction to the question, half of it is we want to give an answer to the person who's asking it, but the other half is for all of the other people who are listening that are wondering. We want to speak on the topic so that more people are able to benefit from it. So we tend to
and closely related questions. That's why I try to range a little bit far afield from the narrow question.
Well, absolutely. I feel bad because somebody will ask a question that will get me on a rant that I'm like railing against something. It's not the original question. I'm very happy all of those get answered. It's to further the discussion for other people who are listening, watching, and are listening in the future who might have a similar question or be having similar thoughts or whatever it's relevant to. So please realize that when you do ask a question, and that's kind of how we answer. The next question, kind of for a different change pace a little bit. Since Tiershof will be the first AFA Hof to be built from the ground up, do you have any ideas of how you want the architecture to look? Will it be built like a traditional pagan temple, or will it retain the cathedral design of the other Hofs? I wish the other Hofs had a cathedral design. That would be magnificent. So a couple of pieces on that. The Hofs we have the design that they have because that's where our ability to get Hofs falls. So we want to find a building that suits our needs, that's going to glorify our gods, that's going to serve the function that we need from a house of worship, being big enough building with a worship space, but also a space together to eat, to prepare food, to have kind of a multi-purpose area where we can have discussions on things, but also to where we can do bloat and make offerings. Ideally, to have a little bit of land or a spot where we can inter the remains of our loved ones. But that comes with a number of other things that, honestly, Christian churches are built in mind with. The idea of having a sanctuary space, a pretty building, a kitchen, and a place to gather and share a meal is pretty common, and it's kind of a built-in that type of a building fits where others don't. The other thing that comes to play is a zoning, to where we don't have to get into a battle with that or have unforeseen complications. Those buildings come with an existing religious zoning, and so that matters quite a bit too. And so that's why we have the ones that we have, and we're very thankful and appreciative, and we love the Hofs that we have. The idea for Tiershof, yes and no. So I watched a little bit of the side chatter in the chat room. Truth is, we don't have a lot of really good ideas of what original Asatru Hofs looked like. We've got very little existent information on that, because so often, specifically in the part of the world that lasted so long, Hofs were built out of wood that tends to decay and not leave the kind of detailed archaeology that we'd like to find on that. We have examples certainly in the Mediterranean of European pagan temples in really grand Hellenic or Latin style. And those are really cool. That's an awesome option. If we had massive resources in marble, I think that'd be really cool to do, and I'm not opposed to. Realistically, though, yes, we do very much have a vision for what we want to see Tiershof look like. Has to conform to kind of the space available, our ability to make it happen, but something that's been a guiding idea in our mind, and I think this rings true. We'll see, and I'm hesitant to overcommit because things change as time goes on, and the realities of a project set in. We have to adjust with the changing, landscape of what we know and what we're capable of. So that being said, I am very much of the mind that the Stavekirke in Northern Europe is the one step beyond the ultimate evolution of Asatru Hof. think you see that in the structure. You certainly see that in the examples of the woodworking that we find from them and in the motifs. You see a lot of Asatru imagery, even in the nominally Christian stave churches. You see a lot of bits of our Lord depicted in the carving. You certainly see sometimes many of our gods in the carving. I think they are the closest image that we have of like the height of what an Asatru Hof would have looked like at the time, or at least conceptually. I think that's a point we want to kind of harken back to and pick up from as far as a visual. They're beautiful, but I think there's a lot of things to do. The other thing that's really important is we don't want to be anachronistic. We don't want to make something that is old-timey for the sake of old-timiness. Truth is one of our values, and we want to be, honest and relevant in our depiction of things. So we're certainly going to use modern methods and the best technology that we have the skill and availability for at our current stage to make something that's really beautiful and special for Lord Tyr. But that's kind of where we're thinking so far. And we have actually this last week, we have a very specific example and design that we've got our feelers out for to see if we can get CAD drawings or drawing's the right word, CAD schematics for, and then talk to people and see about materials and expertise on some resources we have for it. But yeah, those are our thoughts at present. Okay, so the next question. Also, this is a question that a lot of people probably think about but don't necessarily ask, and I'm glad that you asked it, Finn Wraith. Do you think that the gods can help a person win the lottery? I always hear people of other religions like Christianity and Hinduism make such claims. Alan, do you think that our gods can do that?
The short answer is yes. But the longer answer, and this goes back to a discussion that I had with a Gothi who was in the AFA at the time, that where we slightly different question that we were discussing, but sort of a similar question in the idea of, if our religion entails the idea of magical thinking, and I think it does, and if our magic works, and I think it does, then why don't we run things like we used to? And the answer that this Gothi posited, and it has echoed for me in the long years since, it's because their magic works too. And so if so if there's 1,000 people praying to Jesus and 100 people praying to Vishnu and 10 people praying to Odin, and they're all praying for the same thing, then then the nominal change in the way that the universe unfolds is going to be pretty slight. I also think that sort of thing depends on your intention and, so a lot of other things. So I'll tell you a short story, right? Not too long after I found Asatru, in fact, I think it was before I even found the AFA, I was at a brew club meeting and somebody was giving away like we did a raffle every month at the brew club meeting. And there was this one was a nice pile of a bunch of stuff that I still have to walk on the punchline. But like I said, because I started brewing beer in order to brew mead. And now I didn't think ahead, like that, but I I didn't mumble the runes over the lottery tickets that I bought, the raffle ticket that I bought, but I bought 9 tickets to this raffle and I won it. Now, do I think the All Father, his own personal self, intervened in that? No. It would be, now the way I understand it, it was probably more likely my grandfather, who was a brewer himself, although he brewed corn liquor, which is, which was the thing of his day. So those are the sorts of things that, with right intention, I think it can have an influence in the way that the universe unfolds. I also think that that again, that you have to ask for the right thing in the right way. So that, so that you're manifesting the right thing for the right purpose. And I also think that, in a certain way, and I don't like to use the term chain of command, but maybe hierarchy is the better answer, the better phrase for that. The idea to me is like, you don't, like, if your garbage doesn't get picked up, you don't call the governor, you call your county commissioner. So if you want to win the lottery, you should be asking your grandmother, not the gods. They have bigger, more important things to do than to help you.
All right. So to follow on that, this is something that's really important. Truth is one of our values.
Win money that you're.
It is very, very tempting and very easy for us to just make something up. But the truth is less satisfying, but it's also honest. Can the gods do that? Certainly. My piety does not allow me to try to set limitations and suggest our gods cannot accomplish whatever they put their mind to accomplishing. Do I think that's super likely to be the outcome? Probably not. What we just don't have the right perfect answer to, that's not how things work. I think that every person of faith will, like, man, if my God is the super awesome God, how come he just doesn't make me win all the time and all the people that like him have all the cool stuff and all the bad people disappear? Because that's just not the way our universe is structured, not how things work. And, neither myself nor the Lawspeaker know every in and out of the exact mechanics of that. Hopefully, the longer that we are Gothar, the closer we come to a better understanding of those mechanics. But what we do know to be true, our gods absolutely bless us and intervene on our behalf in many different ways in our lives. Those take a lot of different forms. Them, making you win the lotto, or making you win, making your team win the football game this weekend or whatever, does not seem to be something that they engage their divine might to make happen all the time.
Right. And, there's also that thing of that often a blessing like that is just a problem in disguise. There's I think it's a Chinese tale where where the guy, the farmer says, wow, my son got lost. Oh, that's terrible. No, he came home the next day but he found a horse while he was lost. That's great. No, the army came, but the horse threw him off and he broke his leg. That's terrible. No, the army came the next day and they were looking for men. And if his leg hadn't been broken, he would have been drug off in the army. So there's that series, and I don't remember how it all goes or how it ends up, but there's that series of, maybe not winning the lottery is the best thing that could have happened to you. Because you have to gut it out on your own. And, it's the harshest winds that makes the hardest wood, as we say at Nerd's. And one of the other things, the problem with history is that it's lived forward, but it's remembered backward. And the example that I came up with for myself is, that if you, if you say you're going somewhere and there's a big storm, well, maybe that's Odin trying to tell me that I shouldn't go there. Okay, or maybe it's Odin putting an obstacle in your path so that if you overcome that obstacle, then you prove your worth and he will reward you at the end. Or maybe it's just raining and it has nothing to do with the gods or your ancestors. So it's, stuff happens and we just have to gut it out and and live by our own might and main.
And a lot of the time, the subtlety between all of those things is the art of doing this well. One of the things, and I talk about this with magic, and magic, as long as I've been doing this, it sounds silly to say, because there's plenty of lunatics that cheapen it by saying silly things. But I think that when people think of magic, they think of, casting fireballs out of your hands or, fantastical things. I really do believe it is the recognition and harnessing of synchronicity through either divine favor or your own efficacy. Being able
tell a
to
short story?
You sure can.
And I apologize for interrupting, but so I keep a Thor's hammer in every vehicle that I own. Thor, the god of travelers, and I know that he has warded me through many mistakes of judgment. So I was driving to Atlanta to practice my kung fu one afternoon, and I got stuck in a little traffic jam. And then right beyond that, there was a state trooper. And I thought, and so I was like, man, that's cool that I didn't get a ticket there. And then I broke out and I got my foot back in the gas. And I thought, I really probably should have thanked Thor for not getting that ticket. And within 5 seconds of having that thought, the blue lights came on behind me. So I think, the lesson that I learned from that is to live with gratitude, which I try to do anyway, but to live with gratitude toward the favors that our gods do grant us, because maybe that was Thor teaching me a lesson to, to recognize him in the place that he does play occasionally in my life. I, I, I have poured out many bottles of mead now on my horg since that, in gratitude to one boon and another. And, I feel like I'm in a better place for having done that.
Absolutely. A lot of us, when we first come home to Asatru, every lightning strike is a personal message from Thor. Right. And every raven is the harbinger of the All-Father's messages. Or if you live in a place that has daily thunder and lightning, you're less inclined to see every single one of those as a special occurrence. When you live in a place with lots of ravens that are eating out the dumpster, it becomes less majestic. Every raven isn't a messenger from the All-Father. Every lightning strike isn't a message from Thor, but some are. And being open to having the discernment to recognize the one from the other is an art and wisdom that happens over the course of your life. Taking each of those opportunities to be thankful and to, be reverent is always a good thing and never a bad thing. And I don't think that you err by having an excess of thankfulness or an excess of piety. I think that one often errs by having a lack of both of those things. So,
right. Yeah. And that's exactly right. And, that's why Asatru. That's why the way is such a difficult way, because we do, we try to walk this middle path. Everything is not the gods in our intervention in our path, but occasionally it is. Occasionally it's the ancestors opening a door for us that it's up to us to walk through. And so to learn one from the other is to live with that, to try to get there is just to live with that constant knowledge, that constant introspection that can help you learn one from the other. And I certainly do it imperfectly, but it's but I try to be aware and open to the idea and open to the possibility that occasionally my ancestors and my gods open a door for me that it is my responsibility to step through.
Absolutely. A couple other things, and I want to acknowledge this before we get a little bit too far away. Rachel bought us 3 coffees. It's $15 donation. Just wanted to say how excited my youngest daughter got when she saw Witten Allen on the big TV. You have a little fan out here. That's awesome. I'm really glad that happens. It's cool when kids get to see that. And thank you so much for your donation. I look forward to hopefully seeing you next month.
You will.
Not you, Rachel.
I was saying that you will see Rachel and her beautiful family.
And I guess I'll see you too, and I look forward to that as well. Oh, I should mention, so I've neglected the top of the show. I'm sorry, it's as good a time as any. Come on out to Njordshof for Charming of the Plow, February 21st through the 23rd. That'll be next month. Both myself and the Lawspeaker and Rachel and my family will be there along with other AFA members and leaders and fantastic people that you would like to meet and associate yourself with. I would love to meet any and all of you that I haven't, or to see you again if I've met you already, but I'd love to see you there. Also, keep in mind that a month following, from the 21st through the 23rd of March, is Ostara at Thorshof. That's in okay, so Charming of the Plow is in White Springs, Florida at Njordshof, and Ostara is in Linden, North Carolina at Thorshof. I'm excited to be out there and see all of our amazing people in the Thorshof district and anybody else that is able to make it. I'd love to see you at both of those celebrations if we can. But yeah, keep that in mind and make sure you go to those if you can. And I would also like to acknowledge a 5 coffee, $25 donation from GW Farnsworth, who donates just about every show that we have, and it's very, very much appreciated. So thank you very much for that.
So if you come to Njordshof, try to get there Friday and bring your favorite poem or lore recital. That's one of the things that I'm trying to promote so that we can get it leveraged from the Friday program into Saturday into the more star-studded part of the show, because skaldic recital was always a part of the celebrations that took place at the hall. So, and it does not have to be directly Asatru. I mean, if you have written a song that you want to sing, or if you know a recitation that you want to recite, I promise I'm not going to do any of my Monty Python stuff, but I am going to MC that part of the program. So please bring your favorite inspirational poem or prose, whether it's from the lore or not. I look forward to hearing from all of our seniors Gothar with words of inspiration there.
So, question is, are instrumental pieces welcome?
Absolutely.
All right. So if any of you guys are musical and you can bring your instrument or find somebody local to lend you one, we would welcome that as well. We'd love to see art flourish in the Asatru Folk Assembly, be it visual art or performance art or written or consumable art, all the different ways that art and beauty are expressed by our folk. A lot of different ways to do it right.
Because that's what community is.
Absolutely, it is. Okay,
Fortunately, I will not have my Yay Bahar ready by February.
Matt does like consumable art, and if you're going to present any consumable art, I would like the option to test it to make sure it is suitable for the folk. I would also like the option to opt out if it does not look suitable for me. Where are we at on this?
And since Matt is a vegan, you have to be really particular about the stuff that you present.
Matt is not a vegan. Matt likes the chemicals. If there are chemicals that you withhold for Alan, if you could give me doubles, like 2 scoops of the chemicals. So all right.
Yeah, some red velvet cake and
I can do that. So okay, here's an intriguing question. If the AFA was a bigger religion with millions of members, and if we were richer like some religious organizations, how do you think money would be spent? So, I don't know. Alan, go ahead and take a first swing at this if you'd like.
Well, so here's one thing, and like in comparison, right? One of the characteristics of the Germanic tribes, as opposed to the Oriental tribes by which we are now dominated, is that our kings were known as ring givers. Okay, we became prominent. Our leaders were prominent for their generosity, for their equanimity, for their generosity. So I can tell you one thing that wouldn't happen: there wouldn't be crystal cathedrals and private jets. There would be something that looked a lot more like a flattened out pyramid. Not, our pyramid wouldn't have one guy at the top with this much and everybody else sharing nothing at the bottom. That's one thing. And I think the other part of it is that we would have these integrated communities that we are trying to build that would be local communities of like-minded people who share the traditional ideologies that would make these sorts of communities work, that would help each other, treat each other with fairness and kindness and frith, so that communities could be restored to the ideal that community used to have in this country up until maybe 100 years ago or so, and which still exists in a lot of communities. I don't say it's totally disappeared, but it's been, certainly the idea has been strained by the foreign ideologies that dominate us, both spiritually and politically. So I think that would be that to me would be the one one big change, that, and I think the other part of it would be that, if we envision, I listen to a lot of books about history, and one of the things that I find shocking now is the wars, the desperate, bloody, legitimate wars that were fought over religious ideology. People, they were Christians, but they didn't pray the right way, or they genuflected from right to left, or whatever the issues were that made these little fine distinctions in the Christian sects, I don't think we would have that. Um, and that those lines have softened within Christianity over the last 100 years or so. But like the tribes, the Germanic tribes, I mean, we would kill you and take your stuff. Don't get me wrong, but we didn't care about your religious worship as a general rule. The wars that were fought were never about religious practice, and so I think in that sense there would be tolerance. Um, you know, Frey has this church, Odin has this church, Njord has this church. And it's all part of the bigger scheme of our gods are manifested in the world, but we wouldn't fight you because you're wanting to worship Frey and sit and face south while you meditate or whatever those distinctions are.
It's such a broad question, and I think it's cool, and it's certainly a cool one to think on, and it's an easy one to get lost on when you get on particulars.
Yeah.
If we had like an Asatru kingdom or an Asatru empire or whatever, I mean, the tolerance depends. If your religion is trying to harm us and trying to damage us, things become
That's
really
not real.
No, it's not. And things become really different, but there's plenty of room when you have means to live harmoniously and safely. A lot of the acts of violence in the course of history are done out of need and out of desperation. And when there's a desperation and a existential need, there becomes a greater willingness to do drastic things or to risk drastic things for it. What I think is also kind of true, and I don't know that there wouldn't be crystal cathedrals, but there wouldn't be crystal cathedrals while our elderly are starving and not taken care of. There wouldn't be, and that's the thing. I think Alan's idea of the pyramid, I think we'd absolutely have hierarchy, but it wouldn't be, this pyramid. The idea that we take care of the folk, that's something very important to me, that I want us to do the best we can with the resources we have. And I would love to be able to do in a more comprehensive way if we had, the dream scenario of all those resources you mentioned. I'm very proud of our AFA family and our ability to support one another to the extent we do with the limited resources that we have. When I've talked to banking people and I've talked to other professional peoples in different capacities when we're looking for land or properties for HOFs and various things, they're always really impressed with our ability to accomplish with the relatively humble means that we have. And when they find out our member number, it's really surprising how well we're able to accomplish. And I think a lot of that is due to you guys being generous, for us having members that are willing to commit and give of themselves. And also, I think and I hope that we've earned the favor of our gods and their blessings in a lot of this. And I believe that we have. I mean, it's funny because, yes, in that kind of scenario, it would be really nice to be able to have a clergy that we're able to have them and their family live well and devote themselves full time to ministering to our folk and furthering Asatru and religious service. I think that's really important. I would, obviously want to have HOFs that are done not the way we can get the best for our money, but the way that would be the best for our gods and our circumstance without having to, we're in a spot right now to where we try to make the most responsible use of our money. So where can we get the right lot with the right building near the right amount of our folk at the right price point? And nothing of that's perfect, but it's the best we can do responsibly with the situation that we have. If we had, bajillions of dollars or wherever we're envisioning this scenario, then we'd be able to build one at the level of grandeur we think appropriate, with all the bells and whistles that we need, exactly where we want. What I think Alan is absolutely spot on as well, and we're trying to do it now with the means that we have. Gather our folk together into communities to where we are able to live our day-to-day life in sharing with our brothers and sisters, and having community institutions that reinforce our values and the things that we believe in, and where we're able to care for our elderly, our infirmed, our veterans, our people that are struggling, and help our folk. And I think that, obviously, if we had all the money in the world or whatever the scenario is, we'd be able to do that much better. And we'd be able to carve out a more integrated, holistic space for us and ours in the world. And I think that'd be really nice. If you said, though, today, hey, Matt, we're going to give you $100 million, go, it would be irresponsible to just dump it all into some of these things, because we need to build the infrastructure to support them. Right now, if I had all the money in the world, I would immediately get Freyshof, and I would immediately, pay off Njordshof and build Tiershof and the great hall that we want at Sigerheim.
And buy a private jet, you got to admit.
I wouldn't, but I may buy a tour bus. I think like a band tour bus, like a metal band tour bus to drive around with a bunch of us to events would be awesome.
Or buy each Hoff a bus, so that people don't have the excuse of I can't drive 2 hours to go to a Hoff.
Absolutely. And no joke, absolutely. That tour bus, again, if we're driving through where you're at and we got the space, hop on in. I think realistically something like that would be cool, but we need to build up the spots of where we can do it before I want people to understand from this. I know we're having fun with the vision, and that's cool, and I think it's important. But on a very serious note, it's not, because I think this is really relevant to the topic today too. We have reached a point in our efficacy which is really nice, and I don't know what Alan envisioned when he got involved with this, but this was very far from being the case when either he nor I got involved with this. To where now it's not, the challenge isn't getting a Hoff somewhere. We can do that. We know how to do that. We know how to do that well, and to do that and pay that off in a relatively short amount of time. I wouldn't say it's easy. That's not the case, but it is accomplishable, and we know how to do it. The thing that's important is it's an investment. Once we do that, it's the maintenance and the taking care of, and the treating it with the reverence it deserves, and making sure that it is a lasting institution and not something that goes derelict or falls apart. Or once we're establishing a Hoff, we're making a commitment to the God of that Hoff that we're going to maintain that place of worship. And that's a really important responsibility. So the initial cost of the Hoff is something to consider, but also the ability and the resources, not just financially, but with manpower and commitment from that manpower to take care of that place and to keep it holy and well maintained.
That, and it dovetails that, interestingly, when you have that discussion, back to go the East question about how I felt, or what drew me to the AFA, or how I felt when I first came into the AFA. It helped me understand, or help self with that reinforced idea that we're the normal ones. We are the ones who are whole and integrated, and and traditional, and those sorts of things. Others are less so, because they've been misguided. But to come to a Hoff, and there are 20, 30, 60 people in there who share this ideology, who share this love of tradition, the love for the gods of our people, which then it's so naturally unfolds the understandings that can come. It really is, as we say, it's coming. It really is that sense of coming home. It's like a family reunion every time I go to the Hoff, which is another way of saying if you haven't been, you need to go. Yes, it's a pain in the neck, and we get so many inquiries. There's not a Hoff in my state. Well, and that's what Matt was talking about. When I first joined the AFA in 2010, one Hoff seemed like a distant dream. Maybe one day we could get a Hoff. And now we have 4, and then people are frustrated because we don't have 50, and I guess if there were 50, I can't drive from Cincinnati. I live in Cleveland, so you get out of it what you put in it. And if you think about what travel used to be 100 years ago, it was a 3-hour commitment to go 15 miles. So to commit to come 3 or 4 hours once a month to come to the Hoff to meet the people who think like you, who will recognize you as a friend and brother, that's a small price to pay for the feeling that you get, that you'll go away from the reinforced ideal that we're right, because we are right.
So
I tried to keep going because I knew you were finishing off that bag of chips.
well, so just because it's unsightly, but they're the Quest protein chips. So purveyors of Gorilla Snot and Quest protein chips and Kirkland rum, I will gladly support you on the show. You should consider advertising with the Asatru Folk Assembly. Something important.
Ask me about rum when you get to the Hoff on
Will do
next month.
One of the other things about kind of the thing we're talking about in Hoffs, I've been over this with some folks too, and it's a double-edged sword. We get people that are very confused, like, why don't you guys have more Hoffs? Why don't you get a Hoff faster? Why? The idea that that having Hoffs to our gods has been so normalized that they just assume that they are everywhere, I think really it is frustrating to those of us who've been struggling for it. But on the other side of it, it's also gratifying that that's the reality of the world to these people, because I'll tell you what, seeing my daughter play now in the yards of all of our Hoffs, that's living the dream. That is. Good night, baby. That is the height of what I could have ever imagined. And the fact that's a thing for so many people, that's a testament that we're doing something right.
But the answer to that question is, what's taken so long is because, we need to give more money. And, I hate to have to say that. I know you don't like to have to ask people for money. But it is absolutely the truth that's what it takes to pay these Hoffs off. That's what it will take to buy the next Hoff. That's what it's going to take to build Tears Hoff.
Absolutely. Yes.
And again, having worked with hundreds of budgets and people who, and I've worked with, not with, probably with hundreds of people, certainly dozens of people who have a very modest lifestyle, who bring home $4,000 a month, which is, which is decent but not excellent. But lots and lots of those people who bring home $4,000 a month in turn give $400 a month to their church. And because they, that's a commitment, and it's so for the guy who's given $15 a month and wonders why we don't have a HOF in his town, that's why.
Well, so there's a couple of things that I want to add on it. I mentioned this, I think, on last week's show, but since this one's about money, I'll take the liberty of mentioning it again. I mentioned earlier in the show, Asatru isn't the anti-Christianity. It's its own independent religion that isn't related to Christianity in any way. Right now, we can talk about, the modern practice of Christianity, and that's fine, but biblical Christianity has no relationship whatsoever to Asatru. And so just because Christians do something and it's successful doesn't mean that we ought not to do it. It's not germane to the discussion. So I say that to say this, a lot of people think that the idea of giving a percentage of your income or of giving heavily to your church, oh, that's Christian stuff. We don't do that. We just want all the stuff, but we don't want to pay for it. That's silly and it's childish. And it's also not the way of our ancestors. The word Hoftoller isn't something that we came up with in this generation. It wouldn't be wrong if we did, but it was a concept that allowed the Gothar and the Hofs to function in our ancestors' day. And I read something interesting, just I think earlier last summer, maybe in the early fall, in The Elder Gods by Stephen Pollington, talking about the Anglo-Saxons and their Asatru practice during around the time of the conversion there. And the Christian bishop was admonishing his flock, like, man, look at these, Asatru are out here lavishly giving to their temples and to their gods, and we can't even muster up and get our people to give the tithes. Like, there was a time where our people gave generously to our Hofs when the Christians weren't and were miserly with their funds. So I thought that was really interesting. The other thing, besides just when people want to know the fastest way to get a Hof in Lubbock, Texas, fastest way to get a Hof in Lubbock is to help us pay off Njord's Hof in White Springs, Florida. And I know that's a hard thing to get our people to necessarily wrap their heads around, but I think it gets easier every time we get a Hof and move on to the next one. We have a process that we want to continue indefinitely as long as we have the means to take care of it and the folk to be part of it and attend it and to maintain it, to continuously build Hofs to our gods. And we're building them in a certain order, we're establishing them in a certain order. And we have to finish the one we've got before we move on to the next one. And the quickest way to get us to continue that progress towards something closer to where you wish it was is to enthusiastically help us with the current one we're on. And I mean that. I told, literally, because we had an event there, I was asked a year prior to us getting Thor's Hof, how do we get a Hof out here? And I said, well, you got to help me, get us paid off out at Odin's Hof, and then we'll decide, and then we'll figure it out. And it just so worked out that, I think like a year and a month later, we were able to get one in Linden, North Carolina, and get Thor's Hof. We've had people who've wanted to see a Hof in Florida for a very long time. And when they ask, how do you do that, or what's going to happen, or how do we get one near us? Hey, you need to help us pay off Thor's Hof. Sure enough, 2 years after we got Thor's Hof, we have Njord's Hof in Florida. So that really is a thing, and I mean it. And it will inevitably be true to some of you, and to others of you, you'd be like, I wanted to get one in Nova Scotia and it's not there. But if you keep with the plan, it'll get there. And I can't promise a when, but we'll continue to do this, and it'll continue to march forward as long as we have the support and the means to do so. A follow-up to the lottery question. On the lottery thing, do you think it is impious to pray to the gods for materialistic gain? Should we not instead focus on having devotion to our gods rather than trying to gain something? I think that's a false dichotomy. Alan, let's go ahead and have you take that first.
I don't think it's impious at all to pray for material success. I mean, Njord is the god of wealth. I mean, Frey is the god of abundance and virility. So our gods, in and of themselves, recognize that material wealth as a tool is a way to provide for the folk and to provide for to provide a lifestyle.
That is a concept.
Moderation.
Go ahead.
Moderation in that sense, is the ideal to get there. So I don't think it. I think it would become impious if that became the entire focus of your of your practice. But beyond that, to occasionally ask for a boon from the gods. Again, I would suggest that your ancestors would be more appropriate and would be more directly involved and have a more direct interest in providing you with material assistance or opening the door so that you can provide better for your own material assistance. That I think would be better directed toward your ancestors. But again, in the range of things, I certainly have no qualms as a part of a bigger, wider ranging practice to ask for some abundance from. I mean, that's part of the charming of the plow is so that we can ask for so that we can ask for abundance from the earth to provide for the sustenance that we need, so we can continue to provide pious worship to our gods. It's not improper at all.
No, I think that, there's a number of things with the world that we live in that we're conditioned in. We're all conditioned in it one way or another. To recognize and kind of disabuse ourselves of some of these ideas over time. As I mentioned earlier in the program, Asatru is a holistic way of living. You're not saving up for good things that are beyond the veil and all these bad material things that exist in the world. No, the world is good. Life is good. Enjoying life, wealth, pleasure, abundance, those are all good things. What we are admonished against and we are reminded of, no, hoarding your resources and not circulating them, not sharing them, not being generous, not practicing hospitality, that's wrong and it's sinful in our understanding of the concept. But having abundance allows you to do big, good things. I have every reason to believe that our gods want us to be successful and want us to be happy and want us to be fulfilled and want us to have nice things. I don't think that praying to them for those things is bad. I think it's something our ancestors, it's well attested. That's why they would pray to our gods for a lot of reasons. Odin is the god of cargoes. Many of our gods you pray to them for a successful trading expedition, or your prayer on the Viking expedition isn't so you have max bloodletting. It's so you're able to return home with maximum treasure and booty to contribute to your king or your cause or your estate or what you're doing with it. Developing wealth and comfort for you and yours isn't a bad thing and it isn't a wrong thing. And I don't think that's bad. I think being miserly, not providing hospitality. Alan mentioned earlier, the concept of king was always, not that it wasn't regal and not that it wasn't authoritarian and all those other things, but it was based on ring giving and providing and sharing that wealth with the kingdom and with your retainers and with the people and making sure that the people had their needs met. So yeah, using your wealth and being able to circulate it appropriately is it's not only is it not bad, it's virtuous. Next question is kind of interesting. What do you think of art generated by AI, Alan?
I distrust technology in general. So I think the way that, some of the recent examples that came out, where they ask AI to, to draw a Viking village, and they're, multicultural. I mean, I, I don't like it. Back in my day, if we wanted art, we had to carve the coal from the ground and rub it around on the rock.
So I think that a couple of things kind of with the question. AI does really cool things and it's capable of really cool things, but it's a tool. And if you condition the parameters of the tool to reinforce leftist political ideology, then it is very damaging to what you can produce with the tool. If you have the tool as a receptacle of all kind of different knowledge that you have at your fingertips, it can be a really great thing. There's a lot of things you can do with it. I think one of the questions that is inherent to the question you asked is it really art at that point? AI can do really cool looking stuff. It can be a really tremendous tool, but I think the creativity and the artiness of the art comes from the sculptor or the painter or the composer or the lyricist or whoever's doing the art. But again, I think as we grow in technology, it's going to look different. I think Alan's, old man thing is silly, but it's also true. I think he feels that way to a degree. And I think I do too, as these things come on, things that are further from, Alan's a little bit older than I am, and I'm, a little bit older than a lot of you on here. And I think that, you're undoubtedly a little bit older than people that are coming up, and each of those new things may take you away from your comfort zone. But I think there's a lot of ways it can be used as a tool. I think given free reign on a lot of stuff, I wouldn't want to see it only be generated by AI. If AI is a tool to help you accomplish things that you can't accomplish otherwise, I think there's probably really good uses for it. But like other tools, it needs to be used judiciously. And I think you need the mind of an artist to really make something. So I'll say this too. There's a quality about good art, and some of this is in the eye of the beholder, certainly, because art affects all of us differently, but there is a transcendent quality to art in its highest form that I don't think comes just from AI. Now, if you know how to sculpt, if you know how to utilize AI the way you would a paintbrush or a different tool to sculpt something, again, I don't know. I think we're in the early days of AI to figure it out, but it's something special that happens with the artist that makes the work transcendent and not just really cool. And I'll say this about our murals that we have at the Hoffs. I think we could get AI to make really cool stuff if we told them what to do on the mural to make fantastic things. But the murals that Svan does, whatever critique of the exactitude or whatever skill level, because he is a Gothi who worships our gods, something magical happens and something transformative happens to where that piece of art is transcendent and is, in a way, embodies the essence of that God in that place, or serves as a I don't know the correct word, and there probably is one, but in a way it is able to house for a time or serve as a place where that God can come and reside and be amongst the folk in a really important way. It's been described by a lot of people, and I feel this myself. When you go into the vey in our hofs, the presence of that God is there and inhabits it in a way. And the lens that it does that through is those murals that are created by a Gothi, who is their artist. And I think that's lost if you're relying entirely on AI to do the process.
Or on AI at all. So on a related question, I guess we didn't, art for what purpose? I wouldn't want AI anywhere near one of those murals, because I think that Swan is inspired by the gods in a way that AI is excluded from necessarily, just by definition. If AI, if the art that we're talking about is like pop music, I don't care, because I won't ever hear it. But a related question that came to mind while we're talking about it, I read recently that that the algorithm stuff that we're hearing so much about, that algorithms are flattening art, that because what they're trying to do is make music or paintings or art or whatever that appeal to the highest number of people. So what they want, corporate art administrators are trying to get that center 60-70% of people, so and to the exclusion of the everybody else. And I think we are the everybody else. So where algorithms are driving AI and they're driving art, modern art, I think it vulgarizes the entire idea of it, and but if the question is, I'm a decent painter, but I need to do a little clip art thing to put a face in here, that may be a different question. But the, but I think it's also related to the idea that smartphones are making us dumb. People used to have to remember phone numbers and directions and those sorts of things. And the more that you rely on that thing in your pocket, the less your brain works. Just like it's like having a little mechanical arm lifting stuff for you. Like the weaker your brain muscle becomes, because it's being, because you're letting that brain in your pocket do all the lifting.
Yeah, it's again, when we use the term AI, it applies to a lot of different things. And as long as it's a tool, the trouble is the I part of it. I like that it can get a lot of stuff figured out on the back end quickly that would take you forever to accumulate. I like about one of the coolest things about smartphones is language apps, or being able to look things up very quickly and go down rabbit holes, because you can very quickly do a lot of learning. But if you're not doing the learning in between, if it's just a recitation thing, you miss all the value of the learning. If the tool is doing the creating and not just a tool to, implement your vision, if it is the one creating the vision, then you're taking kind of the art out of it. And there's a lot of cool stuff that it can do, but I think the term art really throws a bit of a wrench in that. But it's a tool. Another question, if it hasn't been asked, why is it important to pay off loans the AFA have on its properties, aside from being able to get more HOFs? I'm trying to find the hidden question because it seems a little bit self-evident. But Alan, what is your
Interest.
Well, that's certainly that's a big part of it is, the interest on the loan, because interest accrues on the unpaid balance. So the faster we can pay the faster we pour money against the principal, the less total interest we will pay, and the less total money we will pay to have Njords off. And then that's more money that will then be in turn ready to pay to start paying on phrase off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is a certain amount of security. And this is one of the challenges. It is sexy to raise money for, man, we don't have a HOF now. Well, let's raise money and then a HOF will appear. It's not really the efficient way it works. What happens is you find the HOF, you get it, and then you backfill, which is a less sexy raise money. Well, why? We already got the HOF. Like, what does it matter how fast we pay it off? And I get the instinctive, but it exists. So me paying it off doesn't make it any more corporeal. It's already been manifested. It's short-sighted for all of the reasons that Alan mentioned. And just, a number of things, and the security of it being ours. And it depends on the situation and what the loan agreement is, or however we've done it to get the HOF. If a loan involves a lending institution, then there's a lien on the property, and it's not really ours. It's kind of ours, but if we default and we don't pay it off, it ceases to be ours and becomes theirs. That's most of the time the situation. If we're taking out a loan from somebody who is an ally to us in some way, then we're honor bound to do right by friends of ours that have extended themselves personally to try to help us achieve our goals. If it's a member of, the AFA who's loaned us the money for it, then that honor obligation is redoubled. At least we owe, them to come out whole on something they've chosen to extend themselves on for the good of us and for the good of the gods. But yeah, all those things. The longer you're paying on it, the more money is lost towards interest and not able to be utilized towards the other projects the AFA is working on. So as we talked about with finances earlier, stacking up debts is a very quick way to completely cripple yourself economically. Trying to free up and pay off debts is a very good way to shore yourselves up and enhance your functionality economically. Okay, so following on the AI question, do you think it would be right or wrong to have history books with AI pictures of historical figures we don't have photos of, or books about, like the gods using AI pictures? Again, it's a tool. I think that because reality is a thing. If you don't have stuff and it needs to get you by, I think it's a good placeholder. I would rather have something that is like, for example, if you're trying to colorize an older picture or clear up a very fuzzy picture, I think that's something I can do really well. And I think that given the alternative, that's probably a really cool thing to do. But I think it's the judicious use of it as a tool, as opposed to, as Alan mentioned, especially the AI that you have access to now that's heavily burdened with political correctness. It's very easy to distort history if you're not very careful and judicious with, any kind of use you want to do of it. But I think the circumstance matters, and I think AI as it develops matters a little bit. And I think another thing that's something to do is AI mock-ups for real people to then work from, like AI helping you with idea generation of stuff and compiling data for you to then choose how you want to incorporate, I think is another tool that artists, use that makes a little bit of sense. But devil's in the details on that. We have a donation of $30 towards the Baldershoff steeple from Scott in Minnesota. Thank you, Scott. That's much appreciated. They've got really, really good plans on what they want to do for the existent steeple. Those of you who may not know, the building that became Baldershoff was left in very poor repair for a very long time. And our people have done an amazing job of restoring and taking care of and making that an amazing place. But the steeple with so much water damage was not structurally sound, and it had to get truncated due to the weather damage. So there's plans in place. It's always our intention, if we use an existing building, that when we're done with it, like not done with it, but when we achieve our vision of how it should be, it needs to be at least 10%, at least as good as it was, and then 10% better at least. That's kind of the standard that we want with that. So this is going to be a really nice thing, and we appreciate your generosity towards it. Last question that we have this evening. Dear Dothy, I see people on the absolute worst of luck pursuing the lottery and even scratch tickets, spending an absolutely absurd amount of money on them when they have nothing. It's clearly a destructive addiction. If you pray for the God's favor and then pursue it as a game of odds, where the more you spend, the better the chance it is no longer a matter of faith and is profane. So that's kind of a question, I guess, a statement question. Alan, do you have a reaction to that or something to say?
Well, and I think what he's getting at is our earlier discussion about is it wrong to pray for the gods, to help win the lottery? And I don't think it's a good idea. It's like, but it's like everything else, right? It's okay to have a couple of beers, but you can't look to Thor's example that, Thor drank a whole cauldron of mead, so I can drink a whole cauldron of mead, and, just like our gods did. Once any behavior becomes destructive, then you're outside the channel of where you should be acting your gods to intercede in your in your destructive behavior, or to rectify your own poor decision making. And there's like what I said earlier, there's no line in there where a little bit is okay. The way to say it, a little bit is okay, a whole lot, like in this question, is wrong. Where's that line in between? It's certainly been said that the lottery is a tax on people who are bad at math. So yes, if you engage in too much of that, absolutely, it's a bad idea, and should be counseled against. If you pray to Odin 1,000 times to win the lottery and you hadn't won it yet, he's trying to send you a message that's not the right avenue for you to generate wealth.
Yeah, our gods don't. There's no celebration of idiocy. And I don't think that we have reason to believe our gods are inclined to be disproportionately charitable to people who continually make bad choices in their life. The idea of finding where enough is enough and too much is too much, that's part of it. What it means to be Aryan, what it means to be noble, is having the discernment to figure that out and make that decision. And it may look different for you, and it may look different for Alan, and it may look different for me. But we have agency, and with agency comes responsibility. We're grown men, and we have the responsibility to make wise choices and do wise things in our lives. And I think that our gods and our ancestors tend to reward us and look favorably when we are exercising our discernment in a judicious way than when we are squandering our resources on stupid things. And I think that's a really good rule of thumb. I appreciate you all joining us this evening. I especially appreciate our guest this evening, Lawspeaker Allen Turnage. Alan will be joining us the fourth Wednesday of next month as well. Is that correct?
It is.
All right. Well, we certainly look forward to that. Please store up or send to vns@runestone.org any questions specifically to line up for the Lawspeaker next time he's on, or we'll answer all of your other questions on our next episode if you'd like. Again, vns@runestone.org. Yeah, thank you for joining us, Alan. We appreciate you.
A great pleasure. It was a pleasure to speak with you as always, and to answer all the questions, all good stuff. And I look forward to seeing you in 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's coming up quick.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I'm looking forward to talking to y'all next week. Until then, hail the Iseer, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember, victory never sleeps.